The Chicago Bulls have hosted a number of prospects that are going to participate in this year's NBA draft. And according to Hoop Hype, the list reveals there are a lot of guards. Does that mean anything for Josh Giddey? I'm here to let y'all know. Let's have a little patience with that. And then to end today's show, we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls being urged to overpay during free agency. I'm here to let y'all know I ain't with that either. Y'all know we gonna talk about it, break it all down, but you gotta hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Boys Podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in like talking Bulls basketball, go ahead and hit that simple two-step process that you can do to support the channel while we're on our road to 10K. That is, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, the easiest way you can support the channel. And also, I'm going to be asking for some of y'all thoughts on some of this stuff too, coming up here shortly. But let's get into the content, man. According to Hoops Hype, the following players have made their way to Chicago so far for a workout. Kingston Fleming out of Houston, Mikael Brown out of Louisville, Bennett Sturts out of Iowa, Ibuka Okori out of Stanford, Peter Suter out of Miami of Ohio, Tamin Lipsey out of Iowa State, Malik Dia out of Ole Miss, and Keba Keita out of BYU. Now, there's the list of all the players that have entered and have met with the Chicago Bulls this offseason. And out of all those names, we have about 6 guards coming out of that whole entire group of 8. 1 forward, 1 center, and 6 guards. Now, some of us might say, and it's here why I'm asking the question today, should Josh Giddey be worried? Are the Chicago Bulls sending a message? You let me know your thoughts below, because this is where I stand. I think the Chicago Bulls are doing their due diligence in this draft. I'm not going to go out there and try to read the minds of Bryson Graham and his front office on what they want this team to look like moving forward. When you go and watch the Chicago Bulls, you do notice that if we're considering the players that are already on the team, the Chicago Bulls need help at the guard spot. We do have Josh Giddey, but we also need somebody that could potentially run alongside Josh Giddey. We do need another style of a guard opposite of Josh Giddey, whether Josh Giddey is here for the long haul or not. My position on this is that Josh Giddey shouldn't be worried at all. If Josh Giddey comes in and do his damn job like he is capable of, and stuff in the stat sheet and having some type of impact, Josh Giddey will be fine. But if Josh Giddey comes in here and not contribute to the style that the head coach, who is yet to be announced, wants to play, and does not provide the paint necessary for Bryson Graham and the head coach and the front office to paint their style of what they want this team to look like, then Josh Giddey will be gone. And it's a fair conversation to have at this moment in time, in my personal opinion, regardless if you feel like Josh Giddey is going to be here long term or just for the season, or will he be traded. But I think, in my personal opinion, it's a bit premature for us to assume that Josh Giddey is getting traded at the draft, to suggest that Josh Giddey is going to be traded at free agency. For me, it's a bit premature. Obviously, things can go another way. But for me, how can you have or make an evaluation or properly do your due diligence as somebody that's running this organization without first seeing these guys that's currently on the team run with a new coach that's going to bring a new system and see how you could properly shape out this team? I think that there will be an evaluation period for a guy like Josh Giddey. And if he does well, he'll be here past the trade deadline. If he does wrong, The chatter will continue and the voices will get louder on if Josh Giddey should remain a Chicago Bull or not. And I get it. There are some conversations with a lot of people that I've seen and interacted with throughout social media and saying the Bulls shouldn't build around Josh Giddey. You are correct. Nobody's asking for the Chicago Bulls to build around Josh Giddey. But one thing that I've noticed over the course of this postseason, you need guys that can handle the ball. Josh Giddey can handle the ball. Is he great on defense? Probably not. But he can absolutely create and pass for others. And he has improved as a three-point shooter, which you're going to need in this league. How do we know if Josh Giddey is going to be ready for anything if we have not been in pressurized moments? I'm not going to completely count the guy out. If that's what you want to do, if you're a listener and that's what you want to do, I'm cool with that. You have the right to your opinion. But I think that we all should have just a little bit more patience, at least until we get to the trading deadline, to where we have an opportunity to watch these young guys under the new head coach and see what the Chicago Bulls would like to do and how they would like to play before we try to make a firm stance on saying he's absolutely gone just because you don't like the guy. We don't necessarily know how these things will play out, because I look at some examples to where how necessary ball handling is. You look around these playoffs, how do the Minnesota Timberwolves feel without a legit ball handler to take pressure off of Anthony Edwards? How do the Houston Rockets look without a legit ball handler to take pressure off of Kevin Durant? And I know that's not a large sample size, but we can also include another style of guard that could have been placed next to Cade Cunningham to help me while his running mate and Jalen Duran was not available. And that's a team that finished first in the East. So I understand that some people may not like Josh Giddey. I'm not going to act like here and say, I'm not going to go out here in front and say I'm the biggest Josh Giddey fan, but I believe that the guy has game. I believe that he has and can bring something to the Chicago Bulls to help them win basketball games as we continue to figure this thing out. But I do understand that I need to be patient, because I know there's going to be an evaluation period before any major decisions made. I would like to see basketball games be played with this new regime that's about to take fold before I make any assumptions. Is the conversation something that can be had? Absolutely. Am I ready to sit back and wait to see what happens? Absolutely. That's my position. And the last point, when everybody talk about Josh Giddey and him fitting the SLAP theory or the SLAP acronym that Bryson Graham placed out there for everybody, I think everybody is forgetting one important piece to what Bryson Graham said about the SLAP. Everybody heard SLAP: size, length, athleticism, and physicality. They're missing one thing he said after that. It is not the end all be all. It's not the end all be all. I want us to remember that part of SLAP if we are going to constantly use that as an argument. You have to remember the full context around SLAP. Not just because it sounds crazy when we say we want to slap somebody today. You know what I'm saying? But hey, that's just my position on it. I don't think this means that Josh Giddey is absolutely gone. I don't think this means that Josh Giddey is on the hot seat or Josh Giddey is going to be traded. Can it happen? Yes. But as of today, weeks before the draft, I don't think it means anything. You let me know how you feel about it down below. Now we're going to move on and talk about the Chicago Bulls being urged to overpay free agents. This comes from Bleacher Report via Grant Hughes, who urged the Chicago Bulls to overpay for a guy like Andrew Wiggins, going on to say Chicago spends slightly above market value on a short-term deal to bring in someone like Andrew Wiggins and flip him at the deadline for first-round assets and undesirable money. He also added, saying that if they execute that plan with Wiggins or some other combination of slightly cheaper free agents, and Chicago could stack up on the income of future first it lacks. Now, I totally understand where he's coming from in Grant Hughes, excuse me. But for me, if we're just singling out or throwing out a name like Andrew Wiggins, I'm not too intrigued. How much money should we give him before somebody be like, that's a contract I don't want to touch? Can it potentially turn into something more differently? Possibly so. But how long are you willing for that to take form and take shape? For the sake of discussion, let's say the Chicago Bulls overpay Andrew Wiggins with a 2-year contract. You're not going to be able to move off him within the first year. And what type of production will he provide to the Chicago Bulls? This is a guy that's relatively reserved as a person. So what type of veteran leadership will he provide for the Chicago Bulls? I think the Chicago Bulls should be tactful with how they dish out the money over this free agency period that we're going to enter after the draft. I don't think you should just go give money for the sake of saying, hey, we could possibly flip this guy in the future, which that should be on your mind, but it should not be the end all be all with saying you're just going to overpay somebody with the hopes that somebody's going to take on that contract. To me, that does not make sense. You should be spending money with intention. Do you go out there and attack free agency? Do you look at a guy like Tari Eason? Do you look at a guy like Walker Kessler? What about Mark Williams? Do you take your time and go address those guys and then go see if you can get some veteran leadership on the team to help the Chicago Bulls and provide them with some leadership? And I'm not just talking about, and I'm not trying to crap on Andrew Wiggins because he could potentially have changed since what I've seen of him and how I heard others talk about him. Absolutely, he could have changed. But the point is do you go out there, and I'm just going to throw some names out there to help the team? Do you go out there and get a Tim Hardaway Jr. to go out there and provide some type of specialist role for the Chicago Bulls like he did with the Detroit Pistons? Do you go out there and get a Malik Beasley to come in here and have a role to help the Chicago Bulls on and off the court like he did with the Detroit Pistons before he got in his trouble? I think those things matter. I think character matters. You got to have some guys on this team if you're going to be signing them for the sake of veteran leadership and for the sake of potentially moving them. It can't just be one-sided of saying that we're going to be able to use this asset in the future, because that's not always true. That's not always available. That's not always going to happen. You have to do this stuff intentionally. So my whole position is the Chicago Bulls need to be smart during NBA free agency. You go out there, if you're going to attack some of the restricted free agents, go attack some of those. And then if you're going to attack some of those other veterans that might be out there, go attack some of those. See what those are going to look like. Don't just hand out money for the sake of handing out money. This is not a charity. This is not a food pantry. This is Chicago Bulls basketball, and we got to make sure, at least in my opinion, that it all makes sense to make it all come together at the end of the day for the sake of winning in Chicago, not trying to get lucky. Not trying to get lucky. How do the Toronto Raptors feel about Jakob Poeltl? I'm just saying. And I don't even know if they I can't remember correctly if they got him in free agency, but I know they overpaid for him and nobody wants him. It's not that simple, bruh. It's not that simple, bruh. If it was that simple, why doesn't it look like Andrew Wiggins will be included in a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo? You know what I mean? Because the Miami Heat did reach out and he wasn't mentioned. And last time I checked, it was for other guys, Jaime Jaquez, Tyler Hero, etc., not Andrew Wiggins, to my recollection. If somebody remembers if Andrew Wiggins was included in that, check me below. I'll stand corrected. I'll leave it alone. And that's, again, no shot at Andrew Wiggins. It's just that I'm not into the business of handing out money just to hope that I get something later down the line. I don't believe you should operate like that, because then you get the fooling yourself, how like the last regime kept fooling themselves that they can just pussyfoot and try to finesse everybody, and they were the ones ultimately getting finessed. those were the guys getting finessed. So for all intents and purposes, yeah, if you want to go out there and do something, maybe overpay, that's their decision. I'm against it. I think you should be spending money with intention. Spend money with intention. The last part will be that nobody probably will be looking at the Chicago Bulls, so you might have to overpay. But that don't mean you overpay for the sake of saying maybe this is somebody we can move off of in hoping. No, this is somebody we're going to overpay so they can help our young basketball team. Should be more important. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of Shy Bulls Podcast. Before y'all get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and man, help us reach that 10K because we bound to reach it any day. We appreciate y'all. Make sure you always see red, and y'all already know, man. I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace.
Cognac.